NBC5 investigates President Trump's next threatened move on Metro Chicago, and that is possibly invoking the Insurrection Act, which would claim a rebellion against the government is underway here and allow for a stronger military deployment.
Our investigative reporter Chuck Goudie on the story for us. He joins us now with what that would look like. Chuck.
Allison, there's a gathering storm over Chicago and the suburbs, even as Illinois State Police and regular federal law enforcement agents have been able to stand up to fairly small and only sometimes violent crowds. But the gathering storm of a wider military deployment to Chicago with full arrest power is being considered by the White House and talked up publicly by the vice president, especially since Trump Justice Department attorneys lost several legal cases here in the past week. Small skirmish lines last weekend handled by Illinois State Police in front of the Broadview facility. Even without the help of National Guard troopers sent in by the president, soldiers last week were ordered by the courts here to disengage, orders being appealed by the White House.
The problem here is not the Insurrection Act or whether we actually invoke it or not. The problem is the fact that the entire media in this country, cheered on by a few far-left lunatics, have made it okay to tee off on American law enforcement.
If President Trump invokes the Insurrection Act of 1807, most legal barriers to military use would disappear. The president claiming a rebellion is underway here, and soldiers could then assume regular police duties, including arresting people.
It would set up a really stark conflict between the president's use of troops and our traditional understanding of the autonomy of state governments in local law enforcement that I think would be challenging.
They could insert curfews. They could tell people to stay in their homes. They could close stores. It's not martial law, but it's one step toward martial law.
This was the last time the Insurrection Act was used, 1992, Los Angeles, after the Rodney King verdict, when L.A. officials asked for help. And NBC Chicago has found that the Insurrection Act has been previously imposed on Chicago, 1894, during the infamous Pullman labor strike that had paralyzed the nation's rail system. Then President Grover Cleveland sent in 2,000 federal troops to break the Union and stop deadly riots. And just as we are seeing in 2025, back then there was fierce opposition to federal soldiers from then Chicago Mayor John Hopkins and Illinois Governor John Altgeld.
We don't talk about it very much in history classes for whatever reason, but there was this extensive pattern. It's called the labor wars sometimes by historians because it turned into something that looked a lot like warfare.
The use of the Insurrection Act and deployment of federal troops in Chicago more than 130 years ago is one of just a few dozen times in American history it's been used, most often to control unchecked uprisings and raging city riots, even though presidents have near absolute power to use it without any oversight.
We're learning so much about the Constitution and the law, and we're a government of checks and balances.
History repeats itself.
So the question here, Chuck, can Congress or the courts review or reverse a president that does use the Insurrection Act?
Good question. Congress, no, although some there would like to change that. The courts, maybe. They can review after military deployment if there are allegations a president acted in bad faith. That's open to interpretation.
Chuck Goudie, we're so glad we have you.
Thank you.